Frontline.
They're stalking behind comic scenes, behind the comic scenes. Mark, J, and Tim. It's the spin-off that has survived. There's no yawning to find the meaning. Is it good? Is it shite? G.I. Joe, Frontline on Talking Joe. Well, G.I. Joe, Frontline on Talking Joe. G.I. Joe, Frontline on Talking Joe. Well, G.I. Joe, Frontline on Talking Joe.
So we're talking Frontline history repeating arc issues 11 to 14. This ran August 2003 to September 2003, 1 month, because it was shipping weekly. This was around the time of issues 20 to 21 closure in the main book. So we've got writer Brandon Jerwa, pencils Eddie Barrows, inks Corey Hampshire, colours Lynx Studio. So that's who Tim knows who to go for. Letters, Dreamer Design, and graphic design Mike Norton. Interesting graphic design actually on the inside front cover with sunglasses and passports and whatnot. Let's have a look at those things on the front of the books. They call them covers, I believe.
Let's have a look at the covers in the gallery.
From Francis Manipool, Corey Hampshire, and Steve Coe. Tim, do you want to weigh in with your thoughts on these 4 covers?
Sure. The cover to issue 11 is a great idea because it sets off these 2 realities. You have this character. In this case, he's lit from the right, and it looks like sunrise, or I guess it's sunset, or headlights. And then you have these Joes on this mission at night under night vision, and it's a POV shot like through a scope. And I'm sort of worried about them. I do think the coloring is too aggressive for both halves of the cover, and either the guys in green should be all green, just flat green, or they can be pretty busy and Chuckles can be more flat. The cover to issue 12, I like the idea that it's this tension, right? It's smart to have the reflection of the countdown on this bomb in Tripwire's goggles, but the coloring is so aggressive on this, like these crazy highlights and gradients on Tripwire all over from these 2 little green lights in the wiring on the bottom left, and then Airtight is cropped so that I sort of can't tell if he's like menacingly coming up behind Tripwire to like hurt him, or if he's just back up, or if he's like bored. And some of that comes from him having a helmet. But this cover does not work for me at all. 13 promises some action because I think it's Jinx. Before I read the issue, and Jinx is in the issue, so then I thought, okay, it is Jinx. But it doesn't sort of jump out to me, having seen this issue sort of for the first time. Oh, that's definitely Jinx on the cover. It's, there's like it's some kind of highway chase because she's jumped on the hood of a car, and she's and the driver is surprised, and then further back is Scarlet on a motorcycle. So there's a lot going on, but it sort of doesn't add up because Jinx looks like she's punching the windshield. Or grabbing the windshield wiper, and sorry, it doesn't work. Cover does not work. And then 14.
I think the layers on this one seems. I don't think your eye quite reads it. I kind of it feels like almost her arms through the windshield, but seeing the illustration, clearly there's a windshield in between them. Yeah. Also, Scarlet shooting at that windscreen is pretty close to Jinx's head.
I know that the Joes are all excellent shots, and I would believe in a scene, if this scene actually happened in the issue, I can believe that Scarlet would say something like, "Jinx, I'm gonna shoot 2 inches to your left," and Jinx says, "Okay." But she's on a motorcycle going, I don't know, 20, 60, 80 miles an hour. There's a lot of bumping and wind. And then 14. So I should say that I'm familiar with these covers because I've seen them in the backs of other Devil's Due comics as ads, and I've always been intrigued by this arc. But this was the first time I have read this arc. This final cover has always puzzled me because until I read the issue, I didn't know who the guy is in the center of the cover of issue 14. And halfway through the issue, I thought, is this the bad guy? Because he's colored like a black guy or a very, very tan white guy or an Indian guy. And his costume from the cover, doesn't match up with quite what he's wearing in most of the issue. And then I thought, oh, this woman on the left must be really important. And then I immediately think of this thing that John Buscema says in How to Draw Comics the Marvel Way, which is for every line you add to someone's face, you add 20 years, right? It's like there's a way to draw Aunt May, there's a way to draw James Jonah Jameson, and there's a way to draw Peter Parker, right? Don't put any lines on Peter Parker's face. So I really like Francis Manapul's work on Flash, his G.I. Joe covers. I wish he'd somehow come back to G.I. Joe. Chuckles here looks like he's, 20. This woman here looks like she's 50, and then the plane in the background is like cropped by the logo. So I've said this for some covers before, like this cover is not more than the sum of its parts. Like it's a montage, right? It's like they're not actually standing in front of the sunset, but it doesn't for me capture the tension of the issue. Great covers ask questions and the issues answer them, and this cover doesn't ask a question, but also the statement that it makes is also a little muddied. So I sort of thought when I was looking at these covers while reading this, I sort of wondered if, like, as is happening with modern issues of G.I. Joe in our IDW episodes, it sort of felt like the editor gave a very general idea to the cover artist who drew something that may or may not have linked up with the issue. And I don't think that's what happened here, since, as Brandon tells us, these were written well in advance. So overall, I kind of like these covers, but it peaks with the first one.
Okay. So I have to ask you because it took me years to notice this. On the cover of 14... which I don't disagree about the coloring of Tyler's face. It's very confusing. It looks like a different character. However, it took me years to see this. Look at it, just take it as a whole. It's an angel. The heads are the wings. The plane is the halo.
Yeah. Okay. So Francis Manapul on his Flash run starting in 2011, like, he's not just an illustrator. He's not just a storyteller who draws. He's also a designer, and he does really great things in that series across full-page splashes, two-page splashes, where he's arranging panels in really interesting ways and leaving space for, like, the letterer to do something with the title of the issue. So I can see that as, now that you pointed out, I can see that as the idea, but it doesn't work if it takes someone years to pick up on it. And now that I see it, I go like, okay, yes, it still doesn't work.
Fair enough.
Is this an observation of yours, or is this something that you know for sure it's intended?
Oh, it's 100% an observation. But I've seen these covers a lot, obviously.
Yeah.
And I was literally sitting at a convention one day, and I went, "It's an angel," and I handed it to my friend Eric Troutman, who was sitting next to me. I was like, "What's that?" And he goes, "Oh, it looks like an angel." He'd never paid attention, So I think that there was an attempt at that imagery in there as well.
Tyler does get to fly in the last issue.
True, he does.
He sure does. My favorite is also the first cover of the 4. I agree with that for sure.
Yeah, for sure. I think that's a really strong cover. And when would have been the first time that you got to see the covers for these issues, Brandon?
Oh, I think I got to see them pretty well in advance, a month or two maybe. Lord knows there were times that I didn't get to see any covers. And also, I would find later, as Devil's Due got really, really into variant covers, people would bring me a copy of a book, and they'd be like, "This is my favorite issue," and I'd have to look at what it was to figure out what it was, because I'd never seen that particular cover before.
Oh, wow.
It's great. It's very surprising, but sometimes people hand you something, you'll be like, "I don't know what the hell this is. I'm so sorry."
Yeah. And what I like about this area generally is that the fact that for the most part, there is a single cover. The cover is the cover. And if we're looking at an issue, everyone's looking at the same cover and having the same memories about that cover and that issue. Cool. Let's bang on into a plot breakdown and see if this helps refresh your memory of what happened in these issues almost 20 years on. Okay.
Oh, God.
Chuckles has been working 4 years undercover in extensive enterprises when a plane carrying the Death Angel virus is hijacked by Taylor Wingfield, and Cobra sends Chuckles to handle the transfer of the payment. Meanwhile, a G.I. Joe team consisting of Beachhead, Flash, Airtight and Tripwire is sent to stop the hijackers, who have now taken control of a missile base in Colorado. Chuckles arrives at the missile base with some Cobras just as the G.I. Joe team have been captured. The G.I. Joes are assisted by an undercover CIA agent and Tyler's girlfriend, Azura, who literally stabs him in the back. The Joes are able to disarm the missiles before they launch and capture several Cobras, along with Chuckles, who chooses to remain undercover. He doesn't stay undercover for long, as when he's in Blackwater Prison, the Joes fake his death and he escapes to a safe house. The Baroness and Xandar discover the ruse and capture Chuckles, who is given to Tyler Wingfield. Later, in Paris, Wingfield, with Chuckles aboard his plane, holds it ransom and demands $25 million, and his mother, Sherry Wingfield, to be brought to him in exchange for his hostages. Once Sherry and the money are brought to him by Flint and his team of Joes, the exchange happens and the plane takes off. Aboard the airplane, Sherry shoots her son. Crikey, try saying that 10 times. Sherry shoots her son, and they jump out of the plane with a parachute together. 2 weeks later, Hawk meets up with Chuckles, telling him that he has another assignment if he wants it. And Chuckles says he does. He just has to keep his promise to the girlfriend that he'd left behind. So art is by Eddie Barrows. And interestingly, he'd previously done some limited work in comics. He'd done 6 issues of a tie-in comic for the World Wrestling Federation on Stone Cold Steve Austin at Chaos Comics. Barrows felt that he needed more practice and took a hiatus from comics and would come back. And he came back with this book, apparently, but has gone on to have a very successful career in comics. And I have only just recently read a massive omnibus of his work on Detective Comics with James Tynion the Fourth. Brandon, yes, I think we discussed before that you didn't have too much interaction with Eddie on the art, but did you what were those exchanges like, and did you get to see some of the pages as they came through? Did they send you some of the digital scans?
Yes, they did. I do remember being able to see some art very early on, and it may have been inked by the time I saw it. I'm not sure, but we had a couple of questions back and forth. I write very very detailed scripts. Mm-hmm. That is one note that I took from reading some writer's advice online, which is if you don't put it in the script, it's never going to appear on the page. So I wrote, very, very detailed scripts even then. And in this case, I think besides a couple of maybe clarification questions that routed through Devil's Due from Eddie to me, we didn't talk much, but I was elated by the art when I saw it. I just, you don't know what you're going to end up with, and I was bottom of the rung of the bottom of the rung, so I figured they'd let somebody's dog draw this and be like, look, it's so great. And I was just thrilled. And things obviously turned out okay for Eddie. he was able to launch a very excellent career after this. So I loved it. Big fan.
Yeah, it's I think generally strong work from someone so early in their career, and it comes across that he's not sort of one to try and sort of take too many shortcuts. I think I'm preempting Jay a bit, but he's probably going to say page 1 out of the gate. He's not taking easy choices. We've got a shot of this military man on the radar, and it's a shot looking up from below, which is always quite a tricky shot to carry off from perspective wise. Jay, did I read your mind?
Yep, pretty much. There's some rough spots in here. You can see, where he's still got a long way to go at this time, but there's also at the same time like shots of greatness. Eddie Barrows, in my opinion, is one of the best comic book artists alive right now. If you follow him on Facebook, you get to see a lot of his Batman pencils, and the pencils for that stuff is just mind-blowing. I mean, Corey Hampshire doesn't do his pencils justice here, and I'm not sure who does it on the Batman stuff, but I've picked up the comics after seeing the pencils on Facebook and been markedly disappointed when I look through it, because it just, I don't know, it loses a lot when they ink it and print it, but his pencils are just unbelievable. So Barrows is really, really a fantastic artist in my opinion, and when I saw that he was the artist, I was like, oh, I'm in for a treat, and I wasn't disappointed.
I thought he's off to a great start on this first arc. He's definitely working hard. Mark makes a great point, right? No shortcuts. I don't think he's comfortable yet. I mean, this is early in his career. He's not comfortable with he's not always using space in the most satisfying way. So there's this panel in the first chapter, a couple pages in, where Chuckles is in his disguise and these three cars pull up, these three Mercedes Benzes pull up, and it's just not a good composition. Like the way that the three cars are cropped, the way that everything about Chuckles' head is inked except for his nose. And I think it's in the third chapter when maybe it's in the fourth chapter when Chuckles is making a distraction on the plane, like during the hostage situation, and one of Wingfield's bad guys kicks him, and it's this like high kick. It's like, no, there's very little room on a commercial airplane to and like this is one of those things where, like, if you're in a rush, or if the script is like, no, it's a high kick on an airplane, it's like, well, I'm going to draw a high kick on an airplane, even if there wouldn't really be room for that. And I think we're sort of used to like how airplanes look and feel on TV shows and movies, where they can pull chairs out of the way to put the camera there, but like there's no room. And that kick is drawn really awkwardly, and then the fourth issue definitely feels to me like he's getting short on time, Barrows, or he's running a little bit out of steam, even down to the final 2 pages, which feel like stylistically the same artist, but in terms of like making choices, like a different artist. So I think this is good, but this is still definitely someone who's early in their career. And both of you are right. Barrows does phenomenal work nowadays, but I see a lot of care in these 4 issues on like detailed faces, and I would much rather that time be spent on like pulling the camera back a little further or swinging it around 5 or 10 feet to the right for certain panels to make a panel compositionally more balanced and a page compositionally more balanced.
I want to jump back real quick and just mention the credits page. Normally the credits page don't have a lot going on for them in these, but this one was cool with the repeating handgun and the money and the target. I thought that just really added to the spy kind of James Bond feel. Again, when I opened this up, I was like, I see Jerwa, who honestly I've never read anything of yours before, so I had no idea what I was going into. But I love Barrows, and I'm like, oh, okay, Barrows, great. This looks cool. And then you start in, and just from the very beginning, it's really good. And especially when we get to the second scene with Duke and Chuckles. And Tim mentioned color earlier. There's a panel, I think it was the first, it's Central Park 0500 hours. And it's like, it looks like dawn. It looks like early dawn. Not like, I can see a lot of colorists not even paying attention to the 0500 hours and coloring that with a really bright sky and really vibrant colors and everything. And I think that everything looks a little muted in here. Most of the stuff looks a little muted. So yeah, I was really high on that.
No, that's all good. And your comment on the inside front cover is picking up from what Mark was saying about Mike Norton's graphic design work here.
Yeah, I think as you say, it sets a kind of a good introductory tone to this is going to be an exciting story, and I guess that's relatively unusual that you kind of pick up on those cues really for a book that often the inside front cover, those credit pages and stuff are quite functional.
Yeah,
as a bookend, only one of these 4 issues has a letters page, and 3 of these issues just have 2 extra pages of ads. And one of the exciting parts of getting more of your favorite comic is getting more of every part of it. And I realized, like, you know, like picking out some letters and like typesetting them and editing them and answering them, that's like the last thing the editor does, like in the cycle before putting an issue to bed. And it's always in a rush. And I thought, oh yeah, they didn't want to do this 4 times in a month for this arc. So I think the inside front covers are great. The way that each issue ends, it's like, oh, I want to see what the fans have to say, and the like editor's snarky comments. It's like, oh, there's no letters in issues 11 and 12 and 13. Sorry, Mark.
But also, it's weekly, right? So they're not getting not getting that feedback in time. That
I just want more letters on the previous arcs.
Okay. Well, my sort of other high level observation about the art is that there's a lot to fit in. I mean, there's a lot going on. There's a lot jumping between scenes, a lot of characters, and some of these pages there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 or so panels to each of these pages on that happen to be on the pages that I've got it flipped open to. So it's quite a lot of work that the artist has to do per page to do all of these extra things.
Thanks to an inexperienced writer.
Yeah, actually, Brandon, do you want to talk about that? Sort of a high level question. What did writing this arc teach you about writing?
A lot, and you learn some of that in retrospect. I definitely was cramming a lot in here. And I don't think it's to the point of overstuffed, but I think that there's about as much going on in these 4 issues as there possibly could be. And there are definitely some times when I should have let a scene breathe a little bit more, because you're right. Every page is just full of panels, and that comes from me. That comes from that detailed script. I think that things that I tried to do. And this happened more than once in G.I. Joe, where I tried a gag that I thought would be a good visual gag, and it didn't. I don't think it quite landed the way that I wanted it to, like airtight with the fake hand.
I love that scene.
Okay, did you? Because
Yeah.
I didn't feel like it actually ended up working, and like I was trying to go back to, I'm trying to go back to the file cards and the basics of the characters, and like him being a prankster and all that kind of stuff, and I just like. I didn't know if that actually worked the way that I wanted it to.
Yeah.
But I'm glad you enjoyed it.
I thought that it worked really well because you get the 2 guys and they're talking, and then here comes Beachhead, and Beachhead's all hard ass, and then you get the stoic faces of Beachhead, Flash, and Tripwire, and Airtight's like, I'm Airtight, I'm pleased to meet you, and I was like, I'm thinking, well, that's kind of odd. That a Joe would be like, and I'm like, but not odd in a bad way. I'm like, well, that's nice. He's showing respect. He's like, oh, yeah, look, you guys are, we're all just Joes. You guys aren't necessarily Joes, but you're just, you're just average Joes. Here, let me shake your hand. And then you turn the page and he pulls his hand off. And I'm like, ha, that's totally Airtight. I literally laughed out loud when I read that. I really did.
Oh, good, good.
I'm gonna
Okay.
jump in here. I think, so, all these comics are collaborations. And so, Brandon, something that you think is going to work or you hope is going to work in the script may not work when the artist gets their hands on it or when the colorist gets their hands on it. I think this joke works fine. I think the colorist sort of killed it because like the green that's right behind the like fake hand is the same green.
Yes.
And so it doesn't read as a thing that popped off. When I read this panel, I saw the sound effect snap and I'm like, is that ice? Because it's the sound of the little like the 2 bursts by the sound effect are colored light blue and white, and I thought I had to like sort of read the panel a second time, like, oh, okay, it's a fake hand, and then again in the second panel where he's holding up his actual hand, and then his left hand is coming in to sort of like tuck in the like wrist glove part of his actual hand, and then the fake hand, like all 3 of those are touching, so you have this like green. So I think in terms of composition, not the best like comedic timing and layout for this joke, this visual joke, right? It's like Eddie Browse, can he draw like action? Yes. Can he draw visual jokes? Like a year into his comics career? Maybe not. And then the colorist isn't helping.
Yeah, visually it wasn't the best, but I got the idea.
Okay, good.
And sort of, I think, it's sort of tying into Airtight's character as established in his rare appearances in the original run and also his file card. And I think helpfully as well, it also follows on from Dan Jolly's arc, which featured Airtight, and he was sort of cracking some jokes there as well. So we kind of remembered that, being recently reminded that Airtight is, is a bit of a joker. I think that same gag sort of gets repeated in the later on in the book again, right? What that made me think though was like, they're on this life or death mission, and Airtight is dragging around a spare hand just on the off chance that he can pull this gag.
He's the guy that always has a rubber chicken in his backpack.
He's got a strange sense of priorities.
I just want to call out one more thing about the art, which I think is a representation of Barrows being a really good artist who's learning, which is on the page after this hand gag where they've got the briefing and Duke is in front of the screen and he says, this is Musad Sharifi. So Duke is a real person in the foreground and Musad Sharifi is on the screen behind them. Okay, so let's separate for a moment that the colorists have made a mistake and they have colored Duke's hand. They've taken the black of Duke's hand and they've knocked it back to like a dark green so that Duke's hand actually looks like it's part of the image on the screen, that it belongs to the doctor. All right, so that isn't helping. Bad colorist. But what's happening here is Barrows is choosing, just like the big panel on page 1 that Mark already mentioned, Barrows is choosing a difficult angle, right? Like an upshot of someone. And compositionally, it's really bold because we've got this dynamic angle and we're looking past Duke to see this important character on the screen behind him. But Barrows makes a choice here, which is that he shows us basically the exact same angle for Duke as Sharifi. They're both blonde, and they're both wearing sort of the same kind of shirt, right? It's not like Sharifi is in like a lab coat or a tuxedo or like a hazmat suit or like, right, I don't know, a feather boa, right? So Barrows, and I don't know if in Brandon's script, there's like a specific description that the scientist has like a mustache and a little bit of a goatee or not. But Barrows, whether by accident or on purpose, is creating a visual echo between Duke and this scientist behind him who is not a Joe, not Duke. And even though he plays an important part in the story, we actually see very little in the story. And so there's this small like confusion that I have when I see this panel, because instead of showing me the thing that makes this scientist the most different from Duke, his facial hair, Barrows puts Duke in the way of the facial hair and blocks it. And so, yes, obviously the guy on the screen is not Duke, but like when you look at this panel, right, the way that we read comics is we see the picture first, then we start to read the dialogue and then, or the wording, and then our eyes go back and forth and we like create the full meaning. So when I see this panel, I'm like, oh, I think Duke is like on a live feed on the screen behind himself, like you'd see a politician at a political rally. And then I read the 3 word balloons and I'm like, oh, okay, this is a scientist. And then I think, why does the scientist look so much like Duke? So Barrows does a lot of hard work in these 4 issues and is doing a very good job. But this panel is a representation to me of like every single thing about a comic is 1, difficult, and 2, a choice.
Fair.
I was just on these same pages. There's a point that I was going to talk to. So it's just the panel before the Duke one that Tim was talking about, which is where the team is essentially being introduced and as to why they're going on it. That they're talking about it's the Mission Impossible style choice that Dan Jolly was talking about last time, which was about choosing your Joes and choosing them appropriate for the specialization to be employed in the mission. So it says that Airtight's the only one qualified to handle the virus, tripwires along in case they've wired the plane or the lab, flashes the man to crack the electronic lock, and
Beachhead.
is team leader, and he's a badass. That's not in the script, but he is. It's sort of talking to the choice of, you know, why these particular Joes are being selected, and it's not just completely arbitrary, and, you know, gives us as a reader and fans sort of some confidence that Brandon, as the writer, knows his Joes, and, you know, is choosing them appropriately for, you know, for the mission. Just like later on we have Shockwave as a door kicker, you know, and so on.
And Flint pretending to be
As the
Bullhorn.
hostage negotiator, yeah.
Well, but here's the thing. I was thinking about that. Since that's Flint and not Bullhorn, that actually works because the negotiations don't go that well. And Flint's
Right.
That's not his job, you know? So,
That's a very good point.
you know?
I thought about being a real pill about it and just putting in a line where somebody after it goes so terribly wrong, somebody been like, we should have called Bullhorn. But, you know, no, you know, the thing about the specialties is, you know, I mean, look, it's very obvious, I'm sure, to anyone who's ever read or seen anything that, like, in this storyline, I took every beat from every espionage, spy, secret mission thing. You know, I did want that Mission Impossible moment. You know, you're the specialist. This is why. This is what you're going to do. I like it when they explain people's jobs before the mission, right? Because that tells you that it's not going to go that way. So here's what's supposed to be happening. But, like, when I was a kid, even, I was like, no one ever played G.I. Joe with me. I only ever played G.I. Joe by myself because it was such a complicated undertaking. Like, I kept notes, and I had storylines when I was a kid, and, like, if something happened to a character, the next time I played with my toys, they still had a broken arm, or we time jumped or something. I'm not even kidding.
I did the same thing. You had, like, your own kind of running storyline that went
Yes.
through as you played. Yeah, and mine
Yes.
were like chess pieces almost. Like, I didn't bang them together. I would move
Oh,
them
neither,
around
neither.
my room to wherever the story called for their position to be.
That's right. And for me, like, I never used Tripwire as a helicopter pilot, right? Like, he did his job. And these were, you know, every Joe in this story is somebody that I really liked, you know, playing with the action figure when I was a kid. So
Even Airtight?
it was easy to lean into that. Oh, I loved Airtight. I couldn't get Airtight fast enough.
Wow.
I loved the Tripwires and the Airtights, and Lightfoot was kind of a goon, but, you know, I still like these very specialized specialists, right?
Yeah. He'll never be as cool as Snake Eyes.
No.
But
Okay, all right.
that's a callback to Dan Jolly's Icebound arc.
Yes, it is.
But no, you're right, Brandon. There are a lot of, a lot of spy movie tropes, I guess you'd say, in here, and action stuff. But it works. It really all works very well. I thought that the first, you mentioned that you crammed a lot of stuff in here. We've talked a lot, especially during Reinstated and The Last Stand and a couple of the other arcs that had a lot of stuff going on, and especially one like Reinstated, about how there was just too much stuff going on. And I was thinking about this after I read the first two issues. I was like, there was a lot of stuff in there, but I agree with what you said. At no time did it feel like too much. You know, it was like, there's a lot of story there that could have been, maybe it could have been stretched out to another couple issues or something. And I'm talking about the first part. But it really didn't need to be. It read really well the way that it was, and I didn't feel like there was too much stuff crammed in there. You had basically a tight cast, and I thought it flowed really well.
Oh, well, thanks.
Excellent. So another thing that sort of jumped out for me as I was reading this, kind of that only works in complete hindsight, was a parallel between this part with Chuckles in his deep cover status, and being put on the spot that he's potentially going to have to shoot his Joe colleagues to maintain that deep cover. And not blow it, which was the kind of parallel to the Cobra series that then came many, many years later, where Chuckles is put in a very similar spot and having to choose between shooting a teammate or blowing his cover. Interesting that sort of that idea. I mean, it's not necessarily an idea that's not, there's a kind of a trope there in terms of it being seen before in movies and stuff. So, but interesting that idea sort of came around probably the second time that Chuckles was in the spotlight after these issues, probably.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's the tropiest trope of all. It's the loyalty test, right? And if I remember correctly, and maybe I'm giving myself too much credit, but I think there's a scene earlier in this first issue where the others are marching through the snow, and somebody asks Beachhead, like, how far do we go to not blow his cover? Like, and Beachhead's like, if you have to put a bullet in a friend to save his life, then you shouldn't hesitate to do that. And I was trying to set up the very real concern that Chuckles might actually shoot one of them, right? To base on that parallel principle that they were applying the same thing to him, and then to come up with this big, very tropey cliffhanger of him having to shoot them. I wanted to put a little bit of genuine fear that he might actually do it.
Yes, and it was a literal cliffhanger. It was the way that issue 1 closed out, with him being asked to shoot one of these men. No, let's get it find it properly. Prove yourself, prove your loyalty to Cobra, and win your life back from me. All you have to do is kill one of these men. To be continued. That was to be continued. Yeah.
Very, very good.
Thanks,
Mark.
Dr. Claw.
Very good, Mark.
Good work.
Yeah, I thought that worked really well, and it was fun when I was reading it because I've thought about this, this exact scenario that Mark mentioned with the Cobra, and reading that, I was always kind of like, wow, it reads really well, but part of me was always like, I feel like he should have found a way to get out of it. He could have. G.I. Joe would have found a way. So when I read this, I was like, what's going to happen? I'm like, here he's presented with basically the same scenario. I'm like, I know he doesn't do what what the guy wants him to do, or else I would have heard about that 10 years ago. But I still didn't know how I was going to get it. I forgot about the CIA guy, but I'm like, wow, what's going to happen here? And I thought, well, look at the two scenarios in the Cobra with Chuckles and Jinx. It's basically Chuckles and Jinx and two guards. Okay. And I always thought, dude, bang, bang, you can do it. You're a Joe. But here he's got all these guys surrounding him. I'm like, there's no way he's getting out of this. I'm like, how is he going to get out of this? So yeah, you had me on the cliffhanger.
Oh, great. Always the goal.
I'm not, by the way, affiliated with the Jerwa estate or getting any kind of payback or money from them, just in case anybody is curious. Mark has my PayPal info, though. Brandon, if you want to slip me a few bucks after the show.
Oh, okay. All right. There's a little something extra in your check this week.
Yeah, there we go.
I was a little confused by the first page of the final chapter where Chuckles and this woman we haven't met before are having this heartfelt exchange, and I couldn't tell if it was played straight, like this is actually how they felt, or if this was a melodrama. And I thought, oh, is this like a movie or a TV show that like we're watching, or one of the Joes is watching, or is Chuckles having like a dream or a fantasy of sort of like what inspired him to become an undercover agent? Because we haven't met this woman yet, and I thought on this first page, I thought, oh, this must be the woman that's on the cover, who's got the blonde hair. Because on the cover, there's a blonde woman who's turned away from Chuckles, who's sad and crying. And on the first page, there's this blonde woman who's sad that Chuckles is leaving, and she's crying. And then I thought, why is she older on the cover? Because she has some lines on her face. And then it turns out that that is Wingfield's mom, and then Jessie, this love interest for Chuckles. So I appreciate the attempt to give some backstory to. Also, I should say, Barrows here is using a comics convention, which I do like, which is not always used, which is that flashback panels have rounded corners, whereas all present-day comics panels that are squares and rectangles have like right angle. They're squares and rectangles, right angle corners. But because these are all horizontal, they sort of look like TV screens. And I feel like, and later in the issue, there are in fact, when the newscasters are talking about the hostage situation, they're more like traditionally like TV shaped screens, but the introduction of a character from Chuckles' past, right? It's like that makes the dialogue in the final page on the final like 3 panels, that makes that work. But for the larger story, it felt like it showed up out of nowhere. Because like nowhere, like, you know, when Chuckles is in jail, he's not like, I'm coming back to you, Jesse. And when Chuckles is like, Duke, man, Central Park at 5 a.m. sure is autumnal. I got to get out so I can go see Jesse.
Yeah, no, totally fair. I don't disagree, actually. That is an aspect that I probably could have left out.
Because he's on the ground there, and he's like, you know, there's the melodrama one page at opening, and then he's waking up and it's Jesse, and you know, maybe there's an aspect of that is a bit dreamlight, heightened reality, unreliable narrator. I wondered, Brandon, in your mind, if you can remember this, when do you think that sequence was? Was it right before this mission, or before Chuckles joined the Joes all the way, you know, back? I wasn't too sure about the sense of time that maybe has passed between this and then him, you know, at the end of the mission, him saying, you know, I have to get back in touch with Jesse, because, you know, if it's 20 years on or whatever.
No, I think that I want to say that my intent, I suspect, was that it was prior to the going undercover in Extensive Enterprises, which I say is what, 2 years, 3 years,
4 years,
4 years, yeah. So it's pre that.
I also I don't know how much of this is a story thing or an art thing. I was a little distracted by Chuckles' changing hair in this story, and not
Yes.
not because he's undercover. That's like, okay, I think when he's jogging with Duke at the beginning of the story, I think the idea is he's wearing a wig. And then certainly when he like meets the Cobra agents to make the deal, and he's got the goatee and like the long hair sort of as a ponytail, it's like, okay, well, I don't know if that's a wig or if he's dyed his hair, but like it's brown now. But then when in the 3rd or 4th chapter, he's back to like short blonde hair or like slightly longer blonde hair, and I thought, wait, was he wearing a wig for the 6 weeks that he was in prison? Like, that's going to fall off and blow his cover. So I think this is me, like, digging a little too deeply into the very specifics of like, sort of physical logic in a story. You know, it's like, wait, would it take 3 hours to drive to New York or 3 hours and 15 minutes? And it's like, I don't actually
his hair's
think...
different in the flashback, too. He's, like, almost every time we see him, and the covers look different.
Yeah, so
that's 4 years ago.
Yeah.
So so that
Yeah.
so no, you're both right. That first page of chapter 4, it makes sense. This is a long time ago, and the covers, it is longer. And this is a character who there's something about the character of Chuckles where like all of G.I. Joe has never officially landed on the phenotype of this cover, because Larry Hama thinks of Chuckles as a really big guy, and I feel like Chuckles is actually like a U.S. Marshal, like the sort of inconspicuous guy that you see who's already boarded up an airplane. And you see like a guy who's just like trying to blend in, like reading a magazine on the first seat when you walk down the aisle of a plane. And like that guy's packing and he's there to stop terrorists if there's a terrorist on this plane. But then the joke of Chuckles, and this is like a Hasbro thing, is that he's wearing a Hawaiian shirt, right? It's like, wait, is he undercover? Or is he undercover and I'm a kid? And it's like, no, Gung Ho's going on an Arctic mission. Of course he's got like no coat. Or is it like, oh, well, in this one moment in story logic when we've like frozen Chuckles to make an action figure, it's like, well, he's in Hawaii or something. I feel like, and if you look at Russ Heath's model sheet for Chuckles for G.I. Joe the movie, he's really big, which makes sense. But like as a kid, I didn't understand why in that one scene where he's there in the movie, he's like the biggest of all of them. It's like, wait, and shouldn't like Beachhead be the biggest, or like Big Lob is like a basketball player? It's like, no, Chuckles is actually huge. But like over at Marvel Comics, sort of no one got the memo, and over at IDW, sort of no one got the memo. And like, look at Devil's Due, right? Like Francis Manapul's wonderful cover for issue 11, right? Like Chuckles just looks like a regular guy here, not particularly big or like very, very big. And so something about his like ever-changing hair and facial hair and hair color in the story like actually works in the like the long-term confusion of Chuckles' visual. Because it's like wait, is this Magnum PI, or is this Miami Vice, or is this something else, right?
You know who
like,
he is?
Right.
He's Christian Bale. Totally changes for every role. Yeah, or maybe Gary Oldman.
Yes, he's a John Hurt, and he disappears into each role. But I like, besides sort of the nitpicking of like, wait, wouldn't his like wig have fallen off in the prison? I do think for sake of like a story that's got so much going on in terms of a lot of characters, a lot of scene changes, and a lot of like time jumps, I feel like if Chuckles had been a little, it's like, you know, when I see him the next scene and he's like got the brown goatee and the brown hair and he's meeting a Cobra guy, I had to stop for a moment. It's like, oh right, this is Chuckles. He's undercover. But I sort of almost feel like
I wasn't sure if that was him either.
Okay,
First.
so all right, so I feel like, okay, so if the rules of G.I. Joe are that it's all a little silly and we're just gonna meet them halfway because like Gung Ho doesn't have a shirt and he's gonna, like, I don't even mean the Arctic, he's gonna be in like Maine or like Montana where it's cold, then and like it's like
or
this,
or at the G.I. Joe safe house 10 miles north of Slidell, Louisiana.
Slidell, Louisiana, which is a very real place.
Thank you. So, if there's a ninja in G.I. Joe who can stop his heart to appear dead, right? Like I'm in my 40s and I'm still only like 90% sure that Larry Hama just invented that, and that's not actually a real thing that someone could do.
I do
I feel
work
like
all the time.
I feel like in the sort of fun fantasy logic of G.I. Joe, it's like, okay, like Gung Ho's not going to wear a jacket even though he needs one. So Chuckles is going to be undercover, but like we should still know it's Chuckles. And it's like, no, like Zorana and the Baroness and like CoverGirl, like they can wear wigs. I kind of feel like it's like, no, you should always know it's Chuckles. And like he should kind of like, I don't think he should have his Hawaiian shirt in that scene where he meets the Cobra guys in the fancy cars. But I feel like he should have his blonde hair. So I'm like, Chuckles. That's Chuckles. That's definitely Chuckles.
He should always be in the Hawaiian shirt.
I think Chuckles should give his Hawaiian shirt to Gung Ho, who's so cold on these winter missions. I mean, Chuckles is obviously hanging out in Hawaii.
Yeah.
Wouldn't he be hot wearing that shirt all the time?
So one thing that no one ever picked up on ever is, so I kind of took the hint from Chuckles and his Hawaiian shirt that part of his process of going undercover sometimes is hiding in plain sight and being very obvious. So his undercover name when he is in Extensive Enterprises is Charles Joseph, Chuck Joe.
Oh.
And no one has ever commented on that ever.
Well, instead of being stunned and embarrassed, I'm going to turn this around and say, Talking Joe listeners, how fortunate you are to hear this exciting reveal from the very source. I wanted to ask Brandon, can you tell us about Azure? Azure. Okay, so Wingfield's girlfriend, and so it's set up that she's going to betray him. Not much longer now, my love. And she says, no, not much longer at all. And then...
Oh, when you say it like that, it sounds terrible.
no, not much longer at all. That's how she replies.
Not much longer at all.
Not much longer at all. So...
She'd be like Eeyore, like, not much longer now.
Okay. All right, so I'm flipping through the second chapter, and she does betray him, and I feel like there's where I didn't write this down here, but all right, so she stabs him. What did you? Now you know how I've felt for the last 2 years, Tyler, pretending to love you as my stomach has turned my stomach from day one. One of the Joes mentions like a lady on the inside, And I
Yeah,
wonder.
it's the CIA agent. He mentions that he's got another agent supporting him.
Okay,
and
thank
then
you.
later in the wrap up on the news briefing, they sort of try and clear up any doubt by saying 2 CIA agents were awarded a special medal of valor.
Okay.
So that being the main guy with the bazooka and his female co-agent.
Yes.
Okay. So, all right. So I wondered, it's like, wait, is this Lady J? And that's the dialogue being sort of cheeky so that I know that it's going to be Lady J. But I can now see I was not reading it carefully enough. So thank you, Mark.
But yeah, she was deep undercover under his bed covers by the sound of things for 2 years.
I thought that we
Don't
would
envy
see
that.
her in the second part. I kind of thought that she would be back to be part of that. So disappointed that we didn't see her again.
She served her purpose.
Maybe one of you guys can answer this too, because I haven't read most of. I read like Brandon up to maybe 100 of the original A-Raw series. But is this the first time that anyone has gone back to the Wingfield story?
Yes. Yeah, and then Joe Casey went back to it again.
Okay.
And brought back...
but that was still within Devil's Due. It hasn't been done in either Marvel or IDW.
I can't speak for IDW, but definitely not in Marvel.
Okay.
I don't think in IDW either. So this brings me nicely onto a new segment called Cash for Questions, and that's where one of our Patreon members is able to ask a question. And this is Christopher Hagan, who asked, what was the thinking about revisiting the Wingfield Saturday Night Family?
That was always one of my favorite stories from the original run. That and The Diplomat, which Larry did not write. Stephen Grant wrote The Diplomat. Big fan of both of those storylines. In fact, I wanted to bring back the character of Brian Hassel, and I just could never find a place to put him in. But I thought that it was a good opportunity to bring in something non-Cobra, just to remind the world that there are elements out there other than Cobra. And that it was a nice little nod to, the things that I loved that brought me into G.I. Joe in the first place. And it seemed like pretty clear and open territory, given that no one had ever revisited it. And so, the whole thing about being betrayed by Azure and then, obviously his mother turning the tables on him, he idolizes the Wingfield way of doing things, the way his father did things. And it's clearly proven that is not an effective method. And all it does is cause the people around you to hate you and turn on you. It doesn't engender loyalty, and it doesn't make you powerful. It makes you a big target to everyone around you. So I wanted to have that sort of history repeating aspect to it. And Wingfield seemed like a real obvious way to go with that.
As an editorial observation, there is no footnote anywhere in these issues that leads the reader back to the original issue 5. And, that issue was not in print. Actually, wait, when did the Marvel... When did the Marvel reprints of the first 50 issues come out?
Well after, I think.
But clearly, like Devil's Due is in the Marvel continuity, but is not feeling strongly about sort of directing people to the previous issues, like as a thing to go by, or sort of reasonably assuming that most everyone has them.
I don't think they did much of that at all, right?
Yeah, correct. Brandon,
Sorry, it was 2002. So actually,
they are in print.
The Marvel collection would have come out relatively shortly before this.
A year
Wow.
before. For those of you who don't know what I'm talking about, if you imagine IDW's classic G.I. Joe volumes 1 through 5, Marvel first published those as G.I. Joe volumes 1 through 5. And then IDW just grabbed the files when they got the license. So, Brandon, there are several people in this story. There are some characters that show up for a single panel where Eddie Barrows is clearly drawing a from photo reference, like a famous person, like in issue 13 in chapter 3, there's a panel with someone who's clearly Jennifer Gardner from the TV show Alias.
Wait. That's one of my I Spies.
Oh, all right. All right.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let me phrase this differently. I'll give that one back to you, Mark. Brandon, the CIA guy who makes contact with Chuckles.
Yeah.
He has a different facial type, hairstyle, and he has a little mustache. Whereas most of the characters that Eddie Barrows is drawing in this story are like, sort of like the Bruce Wayne and Clark Kent, just like square jaw action hero guys. This CIA guy has a different face. Is this someone in particular, or did you specify something in your script?
No, that is not a person that I offered any kind of reference for. There are multiple people who were friends of mine who are in this, the newscasters, and all of that, and we'll talk about that other scene that we're moving on from. Later, I guess, but yeah, I mean, there are definitely some people in here who were friends of mine. I know a Masood Sharifi, even though he doesn't look anything like that particular person.
So one of the newscast presenters was a guy called Tom Shear, and Wikipedia tells me that he's an American musician and music producer and the sole member of Electronic Act Assemblage 23. Is that the person that had the reference for that particular character?
Yes. So Tom Shear, at the time, I don't think it had happened yet, but I had a band called SD6, which is a reference to Alias, and Tom produced our album, and we were released on his label. Good friend of mine.
And the other newscaster looked like had a distinctive name and looked like it might have been a real person as well. Was it something like Wendy?
Megan Mace, right?
Megan
was
Mace.
Megan Mace? Yeah, Megan Mace was the drummer of my band, and also eventually married Tom Shear.
Oh wow!
So yeah.
Did they have the original page to that issue?
No, I don't think so.
Sad.
Brandon, two-part question. One, did you sing for your band, and therefore, two, will you be singing the next jingle for yourself? Question. Are you going to collaborate with Mark on this 65-minute jingle for your second appearance on Talking Joe?
Listen, I am available. You should know, and can I brag for just a second here? So I am a musician still to this day. I just released an EP yesterday on Bandcamp under the name Later Humans. It's all ambient electro instrumental type stuff. However, 3 weeks ago, an Irish electro act called Last Survivor released a new single, and I am on the B-side of the single singing a cover of Ashes to Ashes by Faith No More. And that single is currently in the Irish iTunes Hot 100. We actually cracked the top 20 when it came out. And the main guy in Last Survivor, there's two guys, I don't want to say a main guy, but what prominent figure in Last Survivor is a guy named Decky Headrock. And I mention Headrock in a conversation between Damon and Firewall.
Yeah.
In this arc, I met Decky because he's a huge G.I. Joe fan, and I fell in love with his music as Headrock Valley Beats, and so I made a reference to Headrock, but I met him on the Devil's Due forums. Small world.
And just to echo Tim's point, we're always on the lookout for experimenting with new sort of theme tunes for the show. So if you did want, as a writer, sing it. If you did want to write the theme tune, sing the theme tune, you're welcome to have a go, and we'll definitely give it a shot on the show.
I'll have my assistant send you a rate sheet. I do a mean Rick Astley, so if you ever want to, if you want to rickroll somebody, I'm your man.
Excellent. So we were talking about like sort of characters from the past, sort of making their way into this storyline. So. Yeah. I'm guessing Flash, as your very first figure, had to make an appearance.
Yes.
And Chuckles, what was it that captured your imagination for making Chuckles the lead character?
Chuckles was one of my favorite figures and one of my favorite characters. And I, too, was perplexed by how large he was when he would show up. But I loved the idea of Chuckles. I was also, when I was a kid, I was also into, like, The Equalizer and Miami Vice and a lot of those types of crime and espionage shows. And at the time, I was really enjoying Alias. At the time that I wrote this, I was really big into Alias, and it was nice to revisit those sort of, Mission Impossible type spy things. And so, like, yeah, as a kid, like, I used Chuckles all the time. He was constantly running around in his Hawaiian shirt, infiltrating Cobra. Like, it seemed like a good space to play in, and the fact that it coincided with using some of my favorite characters. I mean, like, Snake Eyes never shows up, right? In this, so I, wanted to play with the toys that I loved as a kid.
Yeah, I'm surprised that wasn't a note. Can you not just somehow crowbar Snake Eyes in somehow?
Somehow.
Yeah, nobody ever said that. Nobody ever said, hey, this would be better with Snake Eyes in it, so I just...
He could be the hostage negotiator, maybe.
Might be better at it.
Couldn't be worse.
I don't think I ever played with Chuckles when I was a kid. As a matter of fact, and this is probably because I mentioned this in an earlier episode of the show, I took my Chuckles apart and gave Duke his lower half and his pistol and holster. So, yeah, Chuckles never really existed in my head canon.
Do you know that as a kid, it never occurred to me to try to take a G.I. Joe figure apart?
It wouldn't have me, except I bought one that was, the rubber band had slipped. And my dad was like, oh, maybe we can fix this. And when he found that screw in the back and it all popped open, it was like a light bulb went off in my head. I'm like, oh, wow, you can take these things apart?
I can't imagine what I would have done with that knowledge. Like, I just can't, because I was like you. Like, I didn't bang my figures together. I never taped a firecracker to anything. I never took them outside, right? Like, but if I had known that, like, we would have gone to town, right? Like that.
A lot of mine were customized. Yeah, if you'd look, you would be like, okay, well, that's Quick Kick's arms. That's so and so. Yeah, I kind of switched around parts that I needed. I had a Punisher figure that I made that was, it was
nice. Oh God, I just had to pretend that my G.I. Joe figures were other things. Snake Eyes, you're Spider-Man. Sorry, like, that's it, buddy.
I remembered the question I meant to ask, which when I had my brain fart, which was Tim. You mentioned that Larry sees Chuckles as a big guy. I just wondered if you had some insight on that particular point, because aside from the movie appearance and that one appearance from that Todd McFarlane issue where again he was drawn as a big guy, every other time he's sort of shown up, he's tended to be more regular proportions, and in more recent years looking like Owen Wilson.
I don't have anything to add. Just that Hama has said sort of conversationally when looking at the way that Chuckles is drawn in the comics, Larry's like, well, he's a big guy. He's a big guy.
Cool.
I spy with my little eye.
I Spy is a segment where we sort of dig into the details, look for some little Easter eggs and little things that we've noticed caught our eye. And this is the one that's sort of been burning a hole in whatever the metaphor is for me, which is that on that page,
issue 13, page 8.
So we've got a scene here. It's multi-agency intelligence briefing, and what I noticed there is we've got some faces that are looking like likenesses.
Yes.
And they're representing the different branches of the intelligence services. So we've got on the bottom left, we've got Jennifer Garner or Sydney Bristow from the series Alias, representing the CIA, or possibly, as you say, the more villainous agency. But I think that would have been asked to get them on that particular meeting. Then we've got Keitha Sutherland, aka Jack Bauer, representing CTU from 24. And then finally on the right, we've got FBI Assistant Director Walter Skinner from the X-Files.
Yep.
I'll take my round of applause.
That's in the Brandon. That's in the script. That's a request.
That is all in the script, and I was just sure that they were going to turn me down on that one. But yeah, no, I wanted to. I just wanted to have that moment of like all of this stuff exists in a larger world. And I don't think there's anything so real world about the X-Files 24 or Alias that it precludes it from being in the same universe as G.I. Joe.
Is that John Constantine in the last panel walking away?
No.
Kind of looks like it.
Could be. The paranormal wing.
Yeah.
That's actually Gung Ho with Chuckles' wig finally wearing a coat.
I love the inclusion of Jack Bauer in here. Huge 24 fan, huge Kiefer Sutherland fan. So love seeing him in here.
And it's amazing how of just a few lines, we've only got him on one panel, just how a few lines can immediately capture who that's meant to be.
It's like you just say, draw someone like sucking a lemon. Okay. Kiefer Sutherland.
Oh dear. I'll move on to another. What I spy. I spy that Tyler Wigfield seems to have the same tailor as CIA spy Duke, Snake Eyes, and also Spirit.
Yeah, that bodysuit was a very popular item in early
It was one of the best
it?
sellers back in 2003.
Yeah, no, I had nothing to do with that, but they sure shopped at the same place for sure.
I have two I Spies. This same issue, Chapter 3, Issue 13, page 7, Panel 1. One of the guards in the prison identifies himself as DePriest. This would be a reference to Daryl DePriest.
That's right.
Who in 2003 he had started working at Hasbro, right? Or was he?
He must have. I wouldn't have known him from anything else.
Okay, because he was a mega fan who was active on like discussion. He was in fandom before he worked for Hasbro. Like G.I. Joe fans knew him, although more 12-inch Joe.
Because he did some writing, right? That he publish some.
His book is called The Collectible G.I. Joe.
Yeah. But no, I don't know him outside of that. Like.
So yeah, I think he was director of marketing for the G.I. Joe line and then global brand management at Hasbro.
Yes, thank you. My other I Spy is that two of these issues in the 8 or 10 pages of ads in the back, two of these issues are a full-page ad for a It Never Happened comic series written by Larry Hama and drawn by Pablo Ramundi called Oxido. And I have referred to this in a previous episode of Talking Joe in I Spy when a letters page, someone said, can Larry Hama come back and write more comics? And the answer was something like, Hama's busy with his new creator-owned or co-owned series Oxido coming soon from Devil's Due. And I had forgotten when that reference, just words, just text in the letters page, showed up, that we do see an image later on in the comic. This comic never happened. And a couple years later, I think Pablo Ramundi was trying to get it out through Image. And, it's 2021. It has not happened. I don't know if any of it was ever like written and drawn, but I know that Hama and Ramundi were developing it for maybe the second attempt was Top Cow through Image, but it has not happened.
I vaguely remember that now. Like I remember hearing about that because you work for the company, you're going to hear about these things. But like I'd totally forgotten about Oxido.
What I like about this image is that my initial impression is like, superhero team, and I start to like rattle off types. It's like, okay, you're gonna have the leader guy. It's 2003, right? So please forgive me. You're gonna have the leader guy. You're gonna have the babe. You're gonna have the big guy. You're gonna have the attitude guy. And then I realize, this actually is turning a lot of that on its head, because, there's a younger sort of wise character in the front, and there's a small like dinosaur person, and then there's like the big guy may also be the attitude guy. So I'm bummed that this never happened. whatever it was.
My final I Spy, and I sort of had to kind of draw a line under too much of this, because there's a lot of peppering of characters that we've not seen too much of and all that kind of thing. But we get a mention at the very end to Glenda and Claymore following up leads in Brazil. Glenda was an exclusive figure that was available from G.I. Joe in Argentina by the Plastirima toy company, and Claymore was released in 1986 in the Toys R Us exclusive Special Mission Brazil boxed set. So deep cuts there on some G.I. Joe members.
Yeah, Claymore, weirdly, I never had a Claymore figure. I was just obsessed with the character. And I ended up using Claymore quite a bit. And the Glenda reference was just, for the fun of it, I guess. Although I did end up referencing those characters again later, towards the end of the main run. But it's just a little throwaway tagline, not tagline, but a little throwaway line that just, again, spoke to the bigger universe, and I was glad that they let me keep it in.
Jay, was there anything that you'd picked up?
The only I Spy I have really is just kind of an overall note. I notice, as someone with a luxurious full head of gray hair, there's an awful lot of follically challenged people in the G.I. Joe Devil's Due universe. And we've got Tyler now. And, that sounds snarky, but it's actually a legitimate point, because there were instances like in the beginning when I thought, is that Alexander Destro? I mean, we've just seen a lot of people that, are bald throughout these issues, and sometimes even a goon or two. And it's like...
Yeah, we
it's
had
kind of like Tim
Dikembe.
said, with keeping the characters recognizable, instantly recognizable. When you throw somebody else in there, and when you've got an artist's kind of generic face that they use for everyone and no hair, it's just like, well, this is any number of bald guys in the book. Who could it be?
This is why bad guys should always have scars.
Yeah, or something. something
Who's that guy with that diagonal line on his face? That's Zaymot.
They've all got scars.
Right.
But they're all gonna have different scars, right? Like, who's that guy with a Batman symbol on his forehead? It's like, oh, that's so and so.
That's Batman.
I have two error detecteds.
Uh-oh.
Error detected. Error detected. No prize incoming.
Which, shocking, they're both color. In the first chapter, page 17, panel 1. Page 17, panel 1. Beachhead's pants are too light. They're not dark gray, and so he sort of like blends in with the other two guys. But like one or two or three panels previously, it's like, no, he's got dark gray pants in this scene. And then the page after the Jennifer Gardner, Kiefer Sutherland, Walter Skinner, I forget the actor's name. The page after that, so this is issue 13, page 9. All right, so there are 3 Joes in this room. Chuckles is standing and holding a mug. Let's forget Gung Ho for a second. Blowtorch is on the right. So in panel 3, Chuckles is holding up his mug, right? In the scene, Chuckles and Blowtorch, if you squint, they look the exact same because they both have short blonde hair and white shirts, right? But then in panel 5, Blowtorch says, seriously though, are you okay here? And if this is the cartoon, it's going to be Michael Bell doing a, Scottish accent? Seriously though, are you okay here? You're welcome, thank you. And the colorists did not catch the blue that should be on either side of Blowtorch's hand, because he's got a white and blue shirt. And so this scene sort of reads like it reads like Chuckles talks and then Chuckles talks and then Chuckles talks. But no, one of those guys talking is Blowtorch.
Tim, you strike me as the kind of guy who might just walk around town and wish that he could leave a Yelp review about everything.
Well, So I'm on Yelp as a business owner. I'm not on Yelp as someone who writes comments. And I think Yelp culture is problematic, but that's an essay for another venue. But I will say that I teach comics and I teach animation, and a lot of class is critique, and comics are expensive and it's all professionals doing them. And I know comics are hard, and there are like third parties like licensors and editors. And I know that the schedule is always behind, but I always want my comics to be perfect. So I'm always a little disappointed.
So then he's disappointed every time he reads a comic.
I'm always a little disappointed.
Turn on your soundbite recorder now, because here's one for free.
Uh-oh.
I love Talking Joe because they're so precise and they're so real about the things that they are digging into. They care. They want every comic to be perfect because comics are expensive and they're hard to make. And nobody knows that better than Tim Finn. And that's why he offers such detailed critiques and analysis of every single panel of every single book they read. This is a dedication to quality that I, Brandon Jerwa, admire in the Talking Joe podcast.
Wow.
Can you say, I'm Brandon Jerwa and I approve this message?
I'm Brandon Jerwa and Tim Finn did not approve this message.
Thank you, Brandon. It's nice to know that this point of view doesn't come across as overly onerous.
No, absolutely not. And I'm being very serious. None of this is sarcasm. Like, I am such an easy mark. Like, if you entertain me, I don't notice half of the gaffes or the little errors, because I just sort of like will give myself over to something. This means that I probably like a lot of crap. And I'm very well aware of this, but I am an easy consumer in that way. Like, oh, did I have fun? Did this cheeseburger taste good? Yeah, great. And so I don't tend to linger on those things, and it's good that there are people who do, because there are too many of me walking around going, no, this seems fine.
It sounds like you might like the Snake Eyes
really.
movie.
God.
This
5
point,
stars.
This point of view where I'm not looking for mistakes, but I think I've wired myself to catch them. I'm looking for mistakes. Like we talk about comics writers and artists and colorers and letterers, and it's the editor who has this supremely difficult task of wrangling all this stuff, right, on budget and on time. I think in another life I'd like to be a comics editor, because then I'd find out what it's like to have high standards and run out of time and not fix every mistake. Like, his
shoes on the other foot.
His shirt's not blue, and that issue just got printed. Chuckles is talking to himself in this scene for 2 panels.
Yeah, I will say that I think during this era of G.I. Joe, at least this very small window of time, I don't know that Devil's Due had a big editorial department. Mark Powers came on board. I don't remember exactly when, but he was definitely my editor, and then Mike O'Sullivan became my editor. But at the very beginning, I think that they were just kind of, and this is not a slam on them. I think this is a small company, but I think that they were largely sort of editing by committee. It gets passed around and everybody looks at it and does this make sense?
I think Blaylock I don't know that he said this aloud when we spoke with him, but I gleaned this from his description of, one, as you say, how small the operation was, and two, as he said, how many hats he was wearing. So
yeah,
and these issues, right? Like, let's all look at the credits again. Writer, penciler, inker, colors, letters, graphic design, cover. There is no listed editor. So it's Blaylock and kind of everyone.
Yeah, and I think that, they were lucky enough, and I'll include myself in this, but I think that with Frontline, they were definitely lucky enough to get writers who came in with an idea of what they wanted to do and executed it, fairly well. So the not having an editor probably wasn't as big an issue as it was once they had separate continuities and Reloaded and the main series and, all these miniseries. I think it grew to a point where they definitely needed one, but at this point they were lucky because all the parts they had were kind of self-managing, you know.
Yeah, and I was going to point out there's actually no credited editor in the credits here, so it's, you know, relatively unusual for a comic to not have a credited editor.
Whew, the Wild West.
Yeah, you bet. You bet it was.
Anything goes. The editor was Hasbro.
Don't do that.
Yeah.
Quote of the week, 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 quote of the week.
Favorite line of dialogue? There was one that I was, when I was reading it through, I was like, I need to make a note of that because that's definitely my favorite. And then I've not been able to find it again. So sorry, it's not that one. But there was definitely some very strong dialogue and sense of character in the dialogue. And Chuckles had some sort of killer zingers in his exchanges with the various characters that he interacted with. Tim and Jay, was there anything that jumped out specifically to you that you wanted to flag?
I have a favorite line of dialogue.
Go ahead, Tim.
This is the final chapter. This is page 14. Issue 14, page 2, panel 5. This is Xandar. Actually, when I read this, I thought it was Baroness saying it because both Baroness and Xandar are really far away. They're very small in the panel. But in looking more carefully right now, both word balloons aim at Xandar. So I will try my best Peter Cullen G.I. Joe the movie impression. I don't think I've been talking enough today. I've warmed up to do this low. Be careful patting yourself on the back, Wingfield. One of these days, you might just break your arm. That's such a cool line.
That was it, Tim. That was the one that I spotted.
Oh, there you go. You know what? Okay, it's divided over two word balloons, and when I read the first word balloon, I thought, this is Mark's favorite line. And then I started reading the second word balloon, and I thought, oh, this is my favorite line.
That's a thing that my mom used to say to me. Or that my mom used to say, like,
wow.
That was just a common phrase growing up.
Can you do that line as your mom?
No, I would never dare impersonate my mother. I don't know where I'd start.
Is which character in the background in the story arc is drawn in her likeness?
None. My parents don't appear until the Battlestar Galactica Zarek book, and they are Tom Zarek's parents.
Wow, that was just a setup for a joke, but this is real.
Yeah.
Nice.
All right. My favorite line of dialogue is the one that Brandon mentioned earlier, when the Joes are walking through the snow and they're talking about what to do. You know, do we shoot Chuckles? Do we kick his ass? And Beachhead says, Chuckles knew the risks when he took the job. I'm not saying to aim for his head, but if you have to put a bullet in a friend to save his life, I don't think you should hesitate to pull the trigger. I was like, hell yeah. I could just see somebody like, you know, because earlier, and there were a couple times when, you know, Brandon mentioned that he put these seeds in earlier. There was one other time, too, where they mentioned, like, you know, how far do we go with Chuckles? And someone basically says, you know, like, rough him up if you have to. So, yeah, he was definitely putting that idea in readers' heads early on that it could get ugly.
So, speaking of planting seeds, Brandon, since the first page of the final chapter introduces Chuckles' long ago love interest, Jessie, and then we return to her on the final page of the whole arc, right? You said at the beginning of our interview, you did not expect to ever write G.I. Joe or comics again. And yet you're planting this seed. It's like I get to this final page and I'm thinking like, oh, Brandon Jerwa definitely thinks he's going to write more G.I. Joe comics and going to write Chuckles again. So what's up with that?
No, I just, I never intended to go back to that. It was just sort of it was just sort of like the opposite of James Bond starting the movie in a different mission. This is sort of like, you know, this is Chuckles gets to go off and do this thing now, and what happens to him next is for someone else to decide.
I think you get to kill him next.
Yay! Oh, boo!
Actually,
boo.
You know, maybe there's an 8-page like Devils Do continuity story. You know, it's like check in with Jessie. You know, she's sad about Chuckles 10 years on, visiting his grave.
I like that. I like that a lot. I did intend, had things gone longer with the main series, I did intend to bring Chuckles back.
Oh. Wow.
But not Jesse.
Listen, man.
No. I asked that as a question, not as a dig.
No. I had no intention of bringing her back.
Okay.
Can we get her, but not Chuckles?
Can we explore that idea? How would Chuckles have come back?
Because it's G.I. Joe, and I don't know. I don't remember. I had a way that, because he died like terribly, but yeah, he got better.
I was dead. Now I'm better. Okay,
yeah.
That's fine. We can live with that.
It worked for Duke.
It worked for Duke. Yeah.
As a ninja, he can slow his heartbeat so that he appears
That's right.
dead.
That's
As a Marine who doesn't wear a shirt, he can go on Arctic missions.
Okay, cool. So, yes, the question I wanted to ask was that just at the end of that I Spy segment, Brandon, whether there's anything that you can remember that was worth calling out, which we've not mentioned to date.
I don't think so. You caught my multi-agency scene, so I think that was that was a thing. Chuckles is in Blackwater Prison, which is from the cartoon, and I think I used again with Wraith, maybe. But yeah, no, I don't. I think you've more or less caught everything. It was just it was a lot of fun, and again, never thought anything would ever come of it. So obviously, the whole experience ended up being pretty good for me in the long run. And I'm still very proud of it. One thing I will say, it's funny you're talking about the dialogue. Like, I do hear it now. I don't know why I felt like every line of dialogue should take 2 balloons and be super long. I definitely, as the years went on, I think I became a slightly more economical comic writer. But, those first few years, I'm like, I know every word, and I'm going to show you in this book. But people would also come to me and say, hey, this book took me 15 minutes to read, and I really appreciate that. And I always felt good about, offering a comic, because I would sit down and I'd read a comic and it'd take 7 minutes, right? And that was taking my time with some things, and so I tried to cram as much stuff as I could into this and make it take a while.
I have one question, which is also an I Spy. So we've talked about on this podcast how Hasbro was not forcing Devil's Due to include new product, but Blaylock was doing it a little bit as a sign of good faith. So Crosshair shows up here in the 3rd and 4th chapters of this story, right? Flint whispers, What about the new guy? The name is Crosshair, sir, and I'm never far. And he's up in a tree with his sniper rifle. And then he shoots Wingfield in the hand in the final chapter. Whose idea were you following the new toys? How did Crosshair show up here?
I was following the new toys, and I needed a sniper, and I was aware of Crosshair, and they didn't even, Devil's Due didn't know who he was, and I had to tell them. They were like, great, and then during the main run, I used a lot of the new toys, and I did it. I did it because I wanted to, and especially Dwight Stahl at Hasbro, he and his brother are barrel rolling Blackout, and Dwight's the greatest guy on earth. And he was always so appreciative of that, but they're legitimate G.I. Joe characters, and they were exciting to me as toys, and I thought, sure, I could have used Low Light, right? But I thought, why not? Let's just say, hey, look, here's a new Joe, because I don't know about you guys, but that was always exciting in the comics to me. It's I don't care about the pogo, but I was sure excited when it showed up in the comic, right? Cool, show this thing off. And it's a tradition. It's a G.I. Joe tradition as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, it kind of grounds it of saying this is the G.I. Joe of now. It's relevant to today, and also these new characters and ideas and are just a way of having injecting a momentum as well. It's like, well, if nothing else, there's this new character that's showing up. What are they going to do? How are they going to mix things up? And I think that really created a real kind of propulsion for a lot of Larry's work. That when he was writing, it was like, okay, I've got to do something with this character. What can it be? And it just it helps along that piece of blank paper as you're starting writing.
Yeah, and I back to the older toys, but like I chose Xandar, and I leaned so hard into Xandar for so many reasons, because I feel like you see that family and you always see Xandar or Zartan and Zarana, and by the nature of the character you don't see much of Xandar, and I wanted to play with that, and to me that was like playing with a new toy just as much as anything else, because I didn't feel like he'd ever gotten much of his own due.
Absolutely. Normally at this point we would give it a score. Brandon, we can do this now with you present, or we can do it at the end after you've dropped off to share your blushes. What's your pick?
Boy,
let him give it a score.
You know what? I'm 50 points all across the board, kid. No, I will. You know what? I will take my lumps, and don't take it easy on me. Like I want to hear your honest opinions.
Okay, let's do it. I'll go first. So, I've not read this. I think since it came out. So my memory was quite fuzzy. I did remember. I did know that at the time. I was very excited about the story, and I did enjoy it. So I was generally intrigued as to what I would think reading it again all of this time later. I can appreciate it for what it is, and I can appreciate the sort of against the context of the Devil's Due run that has come this far. I think it compares favorably. I think the story is good and exciting, and there's a lot of propulsion behind it, and the art is strong. I think there's kind of tells from both the writing and the art that it's a writer and an artist who are still relatively young in their career and learning. So there's it's not without some weaknesses. Some of the proportions of how some of the dimensions of the sense of space are laid out are sometimes a little bit wonky, but I'm never lost in the by those points. And actually going back, I read this twice, once through in more quickly, and once again in more detail, and reading it through the second time, I think helped, and I was noticing more things that I missed in my first reading, and I read it once earlier this week and then again today, and I sort of was actually genuinely looking forward to rereading it to kind of pick out some of the details, which I think is a good sign. So yeah, I think strong, and looking and I think always a good sense is am I looking forward to what comes next? And I certainly am. So I think I would give it about 7.5, which I think is a pretty good score.
All right.
I'm gonna give this a I don't like the color. There's a lot of hard work in the art, but and Mark makes a good point. The storytelling is all clear, except for like one or two panels where I didn't quite know what was going on. The storytelling is all good and the acting is all good, but this is still an artist who needs to balance a lot of aspects of drawing and storytelling. I think Brandon's observation at the beginning that it's not overstuffed, but it's at the maximum load.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's accurate, but I would take it back a step and say, though it's at the maximum load, it would be more effective with a little less.
Mm-hmm.
Though I love the explanation of how this 2-part story became a 4-part story, that there was such a sharp divide halfway through the story, and that the first 2 and the last 2 parts aren't better integrated, throws me off. So I'll give this a 6. Give this a 6.
And for context, Tim does always. It is difficult to get much beyond a 7 from Tim.
What did you give Dan Jolly?
I don't remember.
I think it was a 6.
It better be a 6.
I think it was an 11. I think actually during the Blaylock interview I said, no, you chose wrong. Jolly should have taken over the book. With 25. Oh. I think that's the number of points I gave to Icebound actually.
Okay, I'm fine. I'm fine.
Jay, your turn.
I'll make you feel better, Brandon. All right.
Thanks, Jay.
At the risk of repeating myself for the 100th time, Mark's the
it's
guy
the theme
from England.
of this. Oh.
Yeah, history repeating itself, right? Mark's the guy from England. Tim's the professor. I'm the guy that's never read these before. I had never read any Devil's Due stuff before, and when I came into it, I was real excited to read a lot of it. I'd heard different things. I'd heard some people really loved it, some people hated it. Some companies said this doesn't exist. But I was anxious and interested to get in it, and we got in it, and it was a pretty rough start. That reinstated. I still have dreams about that, but as it gets better, and right about the time right now, I think Mark said that the main series is like 20 or 21, right around this time.
Mm-hmm.
I'm really loving Frontline, really am. And that closure arc was really good. The Zach arc was really good. The arc before that had the Brandon Badeau arc was really good. So yeah, the more we get into the Devil's Due stuff, the more I like it. And I do the videos for the Disavowed stuff, and I almost feel like a lot of times that I wish that I could go back and say, I want to raise this one up a little bit, like the one we did with Zanya. I think I probably, looking at it now, would have given that a higher rating because I was just able to appreciate the art and the storytelling, the writing more as I worked on the video. This one, yeah, I'm really looking forward to that because I really, really enjoyed this. Really enjoyed it. And if you're writing it for another 20 or so issues, then I'm all in. I'm there, and I'm excited. So you did a great job, especially as one of your earliest jobs. I can't say enough. Loved it. Absolutely loved it. I'm giving it a 9.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. That's, you know what? I give you a 9.
I didn't do anything.
No, that's great. And I like, as a reader who was reading the main series, as a reader, Frontline was super exciting to me. Like Dan's stuff and like you say, those arcs.
Yeah, it's been great.
I felt like it was that the whole thing was getting better by virtue of that. And I mean, there's so many great things in the Devil's Due run that I didn't do that I think were really great. And whatever happened out of whatever followed, with the whole run and Master and Apprentice and Snake Eyes and all that, like, for all the disavowing people like to do about this particular run of G.I. Joe, I'm proud to have been a part of it, and I'm proud that we had figures made of characters that we created, and we made an impact on this thing that we all loved, and
that's part of our history.
Whatever the ultimate fate of that ended up being, I got to contribute to something that is literally a part of the fabric of my existence, right?
Yeah.
And part of who I am. So whatever people think about it in the long run, that can never be taken away, and that is gold to me. And the fact that there are people like you who are sitting here still even bothering to read these books, much less take the time and care that you do to look at them in the way you do, I mean, like, that's extremely gratifying, and no sales figure can ever match people just caring and bothering to care about what you have done. So thank you.
Excellent. And what I'd add to my little summary there as well is that I certainly do remember back in the day that enjoying your Frontline arc, and knowing that when you were announced as the ongoing new writer, that being very excited by that prospect, knowing that we were in with a pair of hands of someone that had already delivered a really good Joe story. And excited to think about where you might take the book next, and that's pretty much how I feel now as well. I'm really looking forward to digging in and with our reread from issue 2026 and seeing where things pick up and where you take it.
Well, great. Typer Viper forever, I guess.
Now the truth comes out.
I'm shocked. I can't tell you how shocked I am, because that's all correct. Now that I think about it, that's all correct, and it's totally out of my mind. I guess you could say it's history repeating.
So I think we are pretty much done now, and we can sort of start wrapping it up. Brandon, it was a delight to have you on, and I'm sure we've spoken a long time, and I'm sure we could all keep on going for hours longer. Great chatting with you, and thanks for joining us and being so generous with your time, and hopefully you'll be back on the show before too very long to talk more, Joe, and more about your work on the Devil's Due series. What have you got that you would like to plug now, or tell us where people can find you, or what people should be picking up of yours, all of this kind of thing? It's your time now to do the hard sell for us and let people know all of that stuff.
Okay. Right now, I guess the only thing I'm really plugging is music. So laterhumans.bandcamp.com. My first EP of instrumental electro sci-fi ambient techno music is up, and you can find me on Facebook because I'm your grandpa, and that's really about it. I'm working on a novel, but that's probably a year out, and I'm always doing stuff with games and that kind of stuff, so I stay busy. But yeah, music right now is the focus, but more writing is coming. So yeah, just seek me out. I'm around.
Very cool stuff. I was going to say, should we be downloading Britney Spears' American Dream and Nicki Minaj, The Empire, onto our mobile devices?
Listen, I wrote 95% of that Britney Spears game. I am immensely proud of it, and people don't ever know how to react. And I was the sort of story editor for the Nicki Minaj game. I was immensely proud of that Britney Spears game. We tried to treat her with respect and really dive into making her an investable character. We got a very good response from the audience. These things never last. But if you can find Britney Spears' American Dream, please get in there and play it, because I think it's a lot of fun, and it is a very unusual thing that I did, but it actually helped build the career that I have now, working as a story editor and writer and narrative designer on mobile games, and I'm doing Alexa stuff right now, and it ended up being very lucrative for me, but it's a thing I never thought I'd get into. But yeah, highly recommended.
Wow, unusual indeed.
And not intended to poke fun.
Oh, no, absolutely. I know it's a weird thing. I'm very aware that for me, it seems like a G.I. Joe to Britney Spears. It makes all kinds of sense, right?
Absolutely. Tim, you look like you were about to jump in and say something? No?
No.
Okay.
I'm enjoying this.
Excellent. Yeah, and I would love to actually talk more in detail about all of those projects. I'm sure it is absolutely fascinating. Maybe we can delve into that a bit more next time. So we found out where people can find Brandon's latest projects. Do seek them out. Tim, where can people find you?
My comic book store is Hub Comics in Somerville, Massachusetts, and my blog is arealamericanbook.com.
And Jay, where can people find you? Do they just have to say your name 3 times on the Talking Joe Facebook page and you'll appear?
I wouldn't do that. No, don't do that. Break Room Sketches on Facebook. The other thing will lead to horrible circumstances. Don't do that.
Excellent. So next time back over here, we will continue our look through G.I. Joe Frontline, as we're sort of in the final straight as the book is coming to a conclusion. And we'll also be covering all of the latest A Real American Hero issues as they come out, as written by Larry Hama. And We have a very exciting show coming up as well in our sketchbook and original art shows, which actually, by the time this comes out, will probably have already been released. So we are delving into, we're having a look at the original art to the Holy Grail of G.I. Joe comics. We're having a look at issue 21. The original art to that, which I think has never been aired publicly before. So very exciting. That can be found in the usual places. The usual places can be found on talkingjoe.co.uk, which is the website that has links to everywhere, including the Facebook group, the Twitter, the Instagram, and contact details. We've also got links to Patreon, patreon.com/talkingjoe, and a big thanks to our backers, Richard, Sam, Jay, Bill, Christopher, and Justin, who are getting early access to episodes as well as exclusive content and have a hotline direct to me so that we can ask questions to our guests when they're on. So I think that's us done. Thanks again, Brandon, for joining us. It was a real treat to have you on.
Thanks for having me.
And warm up your singing vocals, because I think we're done. Because when and remember,
Nobody beats Talking Joe!
A real American podcast.
which somehow has a guy from England. Oh dear. Later, wankers. I need to mix that up. It can't just be later wankers all the time, particularly with without the context as to why we're saying that.
If only that is something that like Zanzibar or Zartan had said in some issue of Action Force. If only that was actually a G.I. Joe thing.
Right?
It's just that you're British and rude.
It's just that I'm British and rude.
Maybe it's just from hearing one of you guys say it in her voice, but I could swear I've heard Zorana say wankus.
Wankers, yeah. Wankers.
Winkers.
Brandon, thank you so much. That was great.
Oh, thank you guys.
Yeah,
this is
thanks
great.
again.
Sorry I talk so much.
No. This is what a podcast is.
Oh!
It's in the name.
We would be disappointed if we had an interesting guest who gave very short answers and didn't always answer questions.
So I was a podcaster for years, and we actually did our show from a proper radio station because we were backed by Intercom Radio. The worst guest we ever had, do not air this, was 9 o'clock in the morning, who was there to talk about his movie and didn't want to.
Oh, no.
And so every answer was like, yeah, I guess, yeah. God. No, we're real excited about it. And like this interview went on for an hour.
Do you think that this was particular to that day? Like it was too early that day? Or do you think doesn't like do a lot of fun interviews?
We had been warned ahead of time, so I don't think it was that day.
That's a great
literally
to have.
Hey, who's coming on the show? Oh, good luck. Cool.
You wouldn't expect that.
Maybe
no, you really would expect a lot of exuberance from.
Maybe he's one of those creatives who really wants the work to speak for itself and thinks that like all promotion is silly. It's like no, it's in the movie. Go see the movie. You'll see.
Was it contractual obligation stuff? I really don't want to do this, but have to. Blah, blah.
Oh, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Sometimes I think of what Tobey Maguire said in an answer to an interview when Spider-Man 3 came out. Someone from a website or a TV show was like, "What are you working on now?" And he said, "This." And they're like, "What do you mean?" And he's like, "It's like I'm just doing a lot of publicity for Spider-Man 3." And I don't know if he said more or if I sort of figured it out, but it's like, oh yeah, for 21 days straight, like this actor and the other actors and the director are like going from state to state and country to country, and like sitting in hotel rooms for like 10 minutes to 20 minutes at a time as like some reporter comes in and asks the same 6 questions, and then the next reporter comes in and asks the same 6 questions, and then they're like doing a talk show at 5 p.m. and it's like it's Spider-Man 3. You can only answer like, so who is Peter Parker this time around? You can only answer that so many times. And even though like, when actors like get in trouble for like having an attitude or throwing a temper tantrum, it's like, you have an easy job. Just answer my questions and play along. It's like, no, these 3 weeks sound pretty awful. I actually have sympathy for all those people who like there are moments when I like wish I was famous. It's like, oh, I want to have an album or a movie, and like lots of people want to ask me questions. It's like, oh, I don't want to do like the Tobey Maguire 3 weeks of that.
No thanks.
Who is this man? Who is this legend? Who is this myth? Who is Brandon Jerwa?
Comic writer, bourgeoisie, born in 1973, Brandon Jerwa. Funko Pop manatee, born in 1973, Brandon Jerwa. Come on, Brandon, you can do it. Pave the way, put your back into it. Tell us why, show us how. Look at you where you come from, look at you now. Hammer, Casey, and Blaylock. Amateurs can go suck a cock. Write those books, dig a ditch. Come on, Brandon, get 'em. Have you ever seen a stripping gorilla? Have you ever seen Sprocket Man, the hero? Morning radio DJ, born in 1973, Brandon Jerwa. Stalker of Dan Jolly, born in 1973, Brandon Jerwa. Come on, Brandon, you can do it. There can only be one, you can prove it. Tell us why, show us how. It's happened before, it'll happen again. Wraith and Chuckles and Red Shadows, created in polyphonic prose. Write those books, sing a song, type a viper, get 'em. Have you ever seen a Dragonski look-alike?